So you want to become a nurse practitioner. Wonderful. Do you need a master's? Do you need a doctorate? What's the difference? Why are there even two options? Why is this so confusing? And which one should I get? If you're asking yourself those questions, friend, I've been there. And today's video is going to answer some of those questions. I'm a nurse practitioner and I will share what degree I ended up pursuing. And I hope to give you a little bit more clarity on why are there two options, what is happening here, and maybe give you some direction for where you would like your education career to go. If you're new here, I'm Liz. I'm a family nurse practitioner and I just graduated about 6 months ago. So this is all very fresh in my mind and hopefully this video will help clear things up for you. I know I was real confused when I was going into this process. And before we start out, I just want to say that this is a topic that people can get kind of polarized on. I will just share my experience with it. I'll try to lay the facts out as, unbiasedly as possible. And every school is going to be different. So every school's program is different. So just keep that in the back of your mind. If you see something that you're like, no, my school didn't do that, don't get up in arms, friends. It's okay. Everyone's a little bit different. I just researched the overall, what the most popular trends are and information is to present that to you. Obviously, every school will have differences. Your career path and your journey will be different than mine. So just keep that in the back of your mind when viewing this. All right, number one, let's start off with what do you actually need to become a nurse practitioner? So you can have either your MSN, your Master's of Science in Nursing, or your DNP, your Doctorate in Nursing Practice. Those are both degrees that you can hold in order to take the board certifying exam. And guys, that's the same for nurse anesthetists. They have the option of MSN or DNP. CNS has the same option, Certified Nurse Specialist. Midwives, MSN, DNP, you get the point. We have options here. This is across the board. Advanced practice nurses have the option MSN or DNP right now. Both will allow you to sit for your board's exam, which will then allow you to be licensed. And guys, it's confusing. Why are there two options? There is a lot about being a nurse practitioner that is not well defined by our current laws. Like, why are there two exams you can take to be a family nurse practitioner? Why is this practice different in every single state? That's a little bit weird. Like, you can do different things in North Carolina than you can do in Idaho, and that's just odd to me. So, like many other things in the field of being a nurse practitioner, it's not super well defined or answered, so we're gonna go with both. There we go. Next question. Can NPs with their doctorate do anything that an MSN prepared nurse practitioner can't? Short answer is not really. In the practice setting, so when you're out there in your clinic, you have the exact same role. You took the same board certifying tests. You are held to the same standards. You are expected to provide the exact same level of care. You do the same exact job for the same exact amount of money. And there are the same rules governing your practice. There are no differences in the scope of practice between a MSN prepared nurse practitioner and a DNP prepared nurse practitioner. The main difference is if you're a DNP, you have an easier time if you want to get into research. So say you want to do some research at your practice, you want to publish it. Typically, people who are published are doctorately prepared. They've gone through those extra classes to kind of get that literature under their belt and know how to present research and all of that. So that is the advantage of having your DNP, is you have that research component. But in terms of you're going to your family practice and they give you an option, MSN or DNP, those two providers should be on the same level to be able to care for you. Next. What is the difference in the actual curriculums? So let's compare the two programs really quick. And I'm gonna look at this from you already have your bachelor's in nursing, you are a nurse and you want to become a nurse practitioner, because otherwise there's a lot of different avenues and that's just, oh, yikes. So for the sake of argument, we're gonna look at it like that. You're a bachelor's prepared nurse. You want to become a nurse practitioner. You're looking at MSN programs. What are you looking at? You're probably looking at 2 years full-time or 3 years part-time in general, give or take. This program is going to teach you how to be a nurse practitioner. It's going to teach you to read and analyze research articles so that your practice can be evidence-based. So you should be able to look at an article and know, is this a valid study? Can this apply to my population? And how would I apply it to my patients I see? You should be able to do that with your MSN. Use evidence-based practice and go. Your doctorate is the same program, and then they usually add on another year. And in that year, you take classes on research, leadership, you usually have to do a research project where you actually implement the research. And with your MSN, you usually have to do some kind of a project where you come up with a research topic, and it's usually like a quality improvement project. So you pick something like I did colonoscopy screenings in primary care in underserved populations when I did my project. So throughout my whole thing, I had to create my project, but I never actually implemented the research. I said how I would do the research, how I would set it up, but I didn't actually implement it because they wanted to walk you through the process, but they were like, hey, like you don't have to actually implement it. In a DNP program, you would likely implement that. You would go out and you would spend about 300 clinical hours implementing your project. You do a thesis, you do the whole kit and caboodle when you do your DNP. And that is kind of the difference. You actually do the research project, you take a few more classes on leadership, and you have your doctorate. And obviously the other difference is the doctorate is a terminal degree. And what I mean by that is that's as high as you can go. You have reached the end. So you are as prepared as humanly possible from an education standpoint in the field of nursing. So that's a bonus. So overall, the DNP does everything the MSN program does. So it does, like I had to do 780 clinical hours. So they did 780 and then they add on about 300 more of the research. It's not in practice clinical. So you're not getting 300 more patient contact hours, you're getting 300 research hours added on top to your degree. You're doing the research project, you have a thesis, and you come out with your doctorate. Next, we'll look at why on earth are there two options? Well, let's look at nursing. There's two options there. We have the associate's degree nurse and the BSN. Obviously, I think someone told me one time on a recent video, they're like, actually, there's still diploma programs. And I was like, whoa, okay. But for the sake of argument today, we're gonna do associates and bachelor prepared nurses. That's still happening because a long time ago, it was like we had kind of transitioned from diploma to AD and BSN, and now we have these two and they're still here and they're both still acceptable. They both get you the same nursing license. Guys, it's the same exact thing with the NP license now. The American Association of Colleges of Nursing, whew, that's a long name, AACN. They are like the head honchos that get to decide these are the requirements for your school. All nursing programs must have this, all NP programs must have this, yada yada. They have decided that they would like the degree for a nurse practitioner to be your doctorate because they were looking at it and they were like, look at the role that a nurse practitioner plays. They are a healthcare provider and they are practicing to a very high standard of care, so their degree should probably reflect that. And it just kind of seemed like, really, you're doing all of this, you have all these credit hours, you are being someone's healthcare provider, like, and you have your master's. It just doesn't sound good. It doesn't elevate the profession in any way. So they decided, let's make it a doctorate. Like physical therapists have moved to doctorates because you're providing care for someone. It should be doctorally prepared. They looked at the field and they said everyone is doing this. So they decided to do this. But in implementing that change, it's going to take time. So they used to say, I think the thing was like, oh, by 2015, obviously that didn't happen. Now I think it's like 2023, but it keeps getting pushed farther and farther because MSN programs obviously still exist. And here is where things get a little bit touchy because they came up with this great idea. They were like, yeah, let's make a doctorate. And then they kind of, in my opinion, missed the mark entirely on where they were directing this doctorate to go. So I'm gonna read you a statement from the AACN on what their goals for a DNP are. AACN reports that transitioning advanced practice nurses from MSN to a DNP is a response to the changes in healthcare delivery and emerging healthcare needs. Additional knowledge or content areas have been identified by practicing nurses. In addition, the knowledge required to provide leadership in the disciplines of nursing is so complex and rapidly changing that additional or doctorate level education is needed. So that sounds great. And I was like all on board with it. And so when I was originally thinking NP school, I was like, of course I'm gonna get my doctorate. It's the terminal degree, it's gonna elevate the profession, cool. And then I started looking at the DNP programs that were offered, and I wasn't a fan, I'll be totally honest. So, giveaway in case you didn't know, I have my master's. I am an MSN prepared nurse practitioner. Because when I was looking at the additional education that was provided to doctorate prepared nurse practitioners, it was focused on leadership and more research. And I was like, I would like more hours in practice or maybe an opportunity to specialize. That would be a really good use of those extra hours and my advanced degree. But instead they chose to give you more classes on research, which I already feel like I have a pretty good hang of. I don't really want to do research. That's why I didn't go to get my PhD. And I don't think I need a class on how to be a leader. Like, that's what you want to waste all those extra hours on? I was excited about the 300 clinical hours, and then I realized they're not real clinical hours, they're research clinical hours. And that made me so frustrated because I was like, we had such a good thing going. I feel like we could use that in school. I think those would be immensely helpful. 300 more hours and more classes on maybe a specialty or just getting to know your role and your patients better. But no, I can't even. In case you can't tell, this gets me fired up. So for those reasons, I chose a master's because I was like, I'm gonna get paid the same amount of money. I'm not going to gain any more skills that are applicable to my practice and my patients. I'm gonna not be able to enter the workforce for longer. And I hate implementing research and writing papers, so why? Other than the fact that I really want to be able to address letters as Dr. and Mr., our last name, on Christmas cards, but that seems like a really petty reason to spend tens of $1,000s more. Anyway, I digress. And guys, this is not in any way to say if you're getting your doctorate, you're doing it the wrong way. I think good for you. That is such an awesome degree to have. Like, you have the doctorate, I think, totally elevates the practice of nursing. Like, to be able to say you have doctorally prepared nurse practitioners. For me, I was just so upset at how they chose to tackle it. I think this was a total miss of a mark. And for me, that's why I didn't do it. Again, if you're doing that, great, awesome. I'm glad. Please do research on why more clinical hours or something would be much more beneficial than whatever they're implementing now. And obviously different programs are different. I have seen a couple that use that and they gave you a specialty. And I'm like, yes! Like, you used those well, but by the confines of what the AACN wants from their DNP programs, they require leadership classes, research classes. So schools don't have the autonomy or the independence to be like, that's useless, let's do a specialty, emergency medicine for an FNP. Hello, how cool would that be? But no. Anyway, I digress. I ranted about this long enough. Those are the options. I'm torn because I think a DNP would elevate the profession and bring us to give us maybe more credibility in our field among our peers. But at the same time, I don't like how they went about it. So I'm kind of a stick in the mud and said, no, thank you, not for me. Well, now that that lovely rant is over, is the DNP mandatory? No, not yet. There are still schools out there that are pumping through MSN graduate. A lot of schools, I think, are starting to adopt the DNP though. So if you are someone who is looking into NP school, it's highly likely that your school might say, hey, we only give a DNP program, or we have both, but we're phasing out our MSN. I know that the school that I went to only offers a DNP anymore. So it's definitely coming. I think that is where we are heading. I am hopeful that we shift gears and we make it a more applicable degree. And like I said, if that is what you want, I am in no way discouraging you. That is just my little soapbox on that. I think it's great that as a profession that we are heading in that way. I think nurse practitioners put in the work and we provide the level of care and should have our doctorates. You know, I think in a few years, PAs are gonna head that way too, because the level of care that they provide is right up there. So I think a lot of people are gonna transition to the doctorate. It's just how, and we need to tweak it just a little bit to make it more useful. But some schools are already doing that, and kudos to them. So what are kind of the major pluses and minuses? Obviously, the major plus to getting your DNP is this is a terminal degree. It looks super great. You're elevating the profession. You know a lot about research. You should be a leader in your field. And if you want to do research, look at you. You know how. You can go write papers. We need more people to do research in a clinical setting. So this is like perfect for you. I just feel like a lot of people who are in the clinical setting don't like research. So I feel like this was kind of the schools and the AACN's way of being like, we need more people to do this. We're gonna make you do this. And everyone's kind of like, I don't wanna do that still. Like, this is torture. But in case you want to, perfect, there's for you. And the benefits of the MSN are it's shorter and you get the same degree. Now the negatives of the MSN, again, are this is phasing out. They haven't come out and said, you know, you have to eventually get your doctorate yet. I don't know if that's coming down the pipeline. I think for now they're saying if you have been licensed as a nurse practitioner with your MSN, you'll be grandfathered into your licensure, so you won't have to get it. Kind of like an ADN now, you're still a nurse if you have your ADN, but will it become a problem with employment in the future? I don't know. And the last thing really quick is there a difference in hireability between an MSN and a DNP nurse practitioner? I haven't seen one. I have friends who were doctorately prepared nurse practitioners and they didn't have any easier or harder time than me in terms of getting a job. They don't get paid any more than I do as an MSN prepared nurse practitioner. They did try to levy that, like, oh, I'm doctorately prepared, and their employers were kind of like, so like, you do the same job. But I think if you were going for obviously a more research-based program, then that would be great. Oh, and another really good thing if you have your DNP is obviously you can teach. which is huge. I definitely don't want to leave that point out, is you can teach at, you know, if you ever wanted to go back and teach NP school. So I would almost consider it just for that, because as you guys know, like I maybe would like to eventually do some kind of a teaching in a college, because my teachers were kind of mean and I want to be nice to these poor nursing students. But that is a huge thing you can do with your DNP. You then have the degree, so you can go back and you can teach. You might have to get like an education certificate based on where you want to work, but you can teach at the master's level, because you remember, you can teach at one level lower than you actually are. Okay, I think that answered most of the questions that I've gotten about MSN versus DNP. Which one should you do? That's totally up to you, guys. I mean, the way of the future is definitely the DNP. So if you want to hop on that train, I think that's a great way to go. If you want to get in and start making money and working and maybe eventually consider going back, that's an option too. Or you can be like me and I'm like, unless they implement something practical for me, like more actual clinical hours or a specialty focus or like more learning content that I can apply to my practice, I probably won't go back, I'll be honest. But if they do that, I really would. There's my spiel on that. There is no wrong answer. They both make you a nurse practitioner. Whatever works for you is wonderful. I hope this helped kind of clear this confusing topic up for you just a little bit. If you guys are new here, like I said, I'm Liz. I'm a family nurse practitioner and I make weekly videos just like this one on Tuesdays and a vlog on Saturdays where I document my life as an FNP. And head on over to Instagram where I post little tidbits and helpful facts throughout the week about my practice as a nurse practitioner, and of course, cute pictures of my baby and dog. We always have a question of the day. So this week it is, which one would you consider? MSN or DNP, and why? Or was your experience different than something I mentioned? Like maybe you go to an awesome school that has a great DNP program. Please, please tell me about it. I want to hear about it. Or did you love your MSN program? Or if you're not in the NP realm, but you're a nurse, like are you an ADN or a BSN? Or if you're in a totally different field, are there competing degrees, and what have you kind of seen with that? Which one did you choose? I like seeing all this. Give me your input and all your helpful facts. And guys, make sure to check out the comments. You guys leave some gold down there. So let's continue the conversation down there. I will see you guys all next time. Bye.